Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Joe Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video to do with the NBA because I'm rocking the Raptor. Rocking the Raptor. Anyway, we are going to look at the top 10 NBA playoff upsets of all time. And no, the Raptors are not in this thing for an upset that they did or have been done against them. So fortunately, I didn't have to worry about the Raptors. But anyway, these are the top 10 NBA upsets of all time. We start at number 10. It's the San Antonio Spurs versus Dallas Mavericks, 7 versus 2, 2010. The Dallas Mavericks were riding high, Dirk Nowitzki helping the team out, and they had a nice supporting cast. However, the San Antonio Spurs, multiple time champions, knew that even though they were 7 seed, they had some power. They had Kawhi Leonard, they had Tim Duncan still around, Manu Ginobili. Man, they had a lot of international stars. Greg Popovich and crew knew how to draft them. And as usual, the Spurs, with their playoff experience, did their job winning in 6 games. But the good news for Dallas is that it didn't ruin them because the next year, 2011, they actually went on to win the NBA title at the expense of the San Antonio Spurs, who were upset. And yes, that upset is on the list. Number 9 is the 1995 Houston Rockets with a few massive upsets as a 6th seed actually making to the NBA Finals, which was the lowest seed to make the finals until 99. And we'll talk about that team later. But anyhow, the 95 Rockets were coming off an NBA championship against the New York Knicks, and it was huge. Unfortunately, though, who was that guy? Sam Cassell. I'm thinking of the who was that Houston guy? Ferdinand Maxwell? Did he leave the team in the middle of the season, just rage quit? But it didn't matter. The Rockets pulled off a few wins, including the big one over Phoenix when Mario Elie hit a three-pointer at the near the end to send the Rockets to the conference finals against the number one San Antonio Spurs. They had David Robinson. No, they did not have Tim Duncan yet. They believe they had Sean Elliott. I think Dennis Rodman played for the Rockets. Yeah, Spur. Yeah, Rodman was a 95 Spur until he went to the Bulls. And, the Rockets pulled it off. David Robinson was MVP, but the Spurs just couldn't get to the final, which was shocking. The Rockets would get to the final, taking care of the Orlando Magic and every team that they faced. Every one of the 4 teams, 3 in the Western Conference and then Orlando in the final, actually won 50 games or more in the regular season. That's actually pretty impressive. Speaking of the Rockets, they're going to make number 8 as well. But way back in 1986 against the LA Lakers, a lot of people thought that the Houston Rockets were lucky just to make it this far. I mean, they did have the Twin Towers of Hakeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson and a few other spot players, but Houston in 1986 made a massive move. Yes, they made it to the 1981 finals against the Boston Celtics and got their butts handed to them, but the Western Conference were full of upsets, and it was down to Houston and the Kansas City Kings. Yes, Kansas City used to have an NBA team, and yes, they had the Kings before Sacramento did. But the Rockets against the Showtime Lakers, who were the NBA champions at the time, finally breaking their streak over the Celtics. They shocked them. In game 5, Ralph Sampson caught the ball and then in one quick motion flipped it up in the net, and the Rockets were going to the NBA Finals. And the Lakers with I think Michael Cooper, number 21, was the guy down on the floor, and they panned on him. But the Rockets shocked the world, got to the NBA Finals, and put Boston through the ringer. But Boston still won the title. Number 7 is one of the biggest playoff runs in the past 10 years. It's the 2023 Miami Heat as an 8th seed. I mean, when you look at a lot of things, the Miami Heat are a pretty good team and all that. But the 22-23 team was magic and all that. They had won 53 games the previous season, being number 1 in the East. Somehow, in some way, they won 44 games. Only 44 games. They would actually have to go through this dreaded NBA play-in system to try to get a seed. They were 7th, which meant they could not move on to the playoffs normally. So they faced the Atlanta Hawks, and the winner got to be the 7th seed. Not so fast. Atlanta beat them. And then Miami beat Chicago in the play-in tournament to get the 8 seed. Technically, you know, that pissed me off because the 10-seeded Bulls were not supposed to win. They were supposed to lose to the Toronto Raptors, and the Raptors probably would have lost to the Heat. That was the game in which DeMar DeRozan's daughter screamed her way onto Raptors free throws, and basically she should have been booted. Anyhow, Miami took care of the Milwaukee Bucks and the #1 seed in 5 games, which was huge. Giannis was hurt, and he didn't really have much backup and all that, becoming the 6th 8-seeded team to beat a #1 seed, one of the biggest upsets around. After taking care of the Knicks in Game 6, becoming only the second 8th seed to make it to the conference finals since the implementation in 1984, and the first team to do that actually is on this list later on. They would make the conference finals, and then they took on the Boston Celtics, and that big Game 6 in which the Heat thought they were going to win and move on to the NBA Finals was ruined when the shot was thrown with 1/10 of a second left, and the Celtics won on one of the most improbable buzzer beaters. Nevertheless, the Heat actually went back to Boston and beat the Celtics. They almost blew a 3-0 series lead, which nobody in NBA history had ever done. They would make good and all that. Unfortunately, though, the Denver Nuggets took care of things in 5 games. As, Jamal Murray, Kitchener, will do the job. In essence, Udonis Haslem retired after 20 years in the NBA, so that was huge. Number 6 is the Detroit Pistons over the LA Lakers in 2004. A lot of people probably don't think it's an upset because, the Pistons were the 3 seed. However, when you know how good the Lakers were, they had Kobe, they had Shaq, they had Rick Fox, they had even Karl Malone and Gary Payton, who were title chasing, as you call it. At least John Stockton stayed in Utah. The fact is that the Lakers were easily going to win the title against Detroit. A lot of people said that. And Pistons were starless. I mean, Rasheed Wallace, who the hell was he? Gerald Wallace, who was he? Chauncey Billups, who became Finals MVP, who the hell was that? Rip Hamilton, who the hell was that? They even had Darko Milicic, the #2 pick, which was a massive flop. But he outsmarted everyone for flops. He ended up winning an NBA title. A massive thing. But yeah, Detroit won the championship against massive odds. They almost did in 2005, but the Spurs beat them. Number 5 is the 2012 Philadelphia 76ers against the #1 Chicago Bulls. And by the way, they're all the top 5 are 8-1 upsets. Derrick Rose was named NBA MVP. Unfortunately, though, he would lose out. He had a serious injury in Game 1, which ruined his career. New York and Minnesota did pick them up a little bit, but yeah, the Sixers with Andre Iguodala, my favorite Golden State Warrior of the dynasty, and you can fight me on that. They did their job. I think Allen Iverson was on that team, wasn't he? Or was it the year before? But nevertheless, the Sixers pulled a rabbit out of their hat and took care of the Chicago Bulls. I think Elton Brand was on that team for the Sixers and upset the team that drafted him. Philly would win in 6 games, but they would fall in the second round. Number 4 is the 2011 Memphis Grizzlies taking care of the San Antonio Spurs. Memphis was not really known for anything. They couldn't win playoff series to save their lives. They spent 6 years in Vancouver, which was fruitless, and they didn't even get 30 wins in Vancouver. Can you imagine playing 6 seasons in one city? And you couldn't even hit 30 wins, much less a 500 mark. Memphis won it. San Antonio wanted it more. After all, they had a good upset over the Dallas Mavericks the previous year, as I mentioned earlier. But the Spurs just couldn't believe their luck. They thought they were going to take care of Memphis Grizzlies. They thought they were going to win the NBA title. Didn't happen. Memphis in 6 games. They had the grit and grind style. And for the first time, the Grizzlies franchise won a playoff series. Number 3 is the Knicks Heat from 1999. I know this should be like number 2 because of the whole fact that number 2 is what number 2 is. But, you know, this is more of a playoff run. So anyway, the 99 Knicks took on the Miami Heat. 8-1. Again, the Knicks and Heat would meet in the playoffs. It's the third consecutive year. And they had brawls, they had ejections, they had a shortened bench, and the Knicks choking a 3-1 series lead because of that. In 1999, it was a huge match. The Knicks forced a game 5 against the Heat. And in those days, before 2003, the first round was best of 5. So anyway, the Knicks and Heat would play on NBC, and then Allen Houston, decent shooter from the U of Tennessee, he would make a running jumper with zero point 0.8 seconds left. Gus Johnson's call for Knicks radio was impressive. But yeah, Allen Houston flipped the shot, and then he ran down the court, and then went boom. Not like that. Vroom. He's the fifth, sorry. I did all that. The Knicks would take care of the Heat, and everyone thought the Knicks were done. Not so fast. They took care of Atlanta in the second round. They took care of Indiana in the conference finals, aided by Larry Johnson's quote-unquote 4-point play. And then they got to the NBA Finals. It was just unbelievable. The 8th seed doing against the odds. And this was the first NBA season to be shortened by stoppage. Nevertheless, the Knicks were taken care of by San Antonio with Robinson and Duncan, and Spurs starting the title. Number 2 is the Golden State Warriors against the Dallas Mavericks, 2007. Dallas were a strong team. They went to the NBA Finals, blew a 2-0 series lead against the Heat, giving Shaq the title with the Heat. Nevertheless, the Warriors were in a culture. They got lucky to make the playoffs, and then they were playing in Oakland, which people like to avoid. But the fact is that Baron Davis put on a show for Golden State, taking care of Dallas in 6 games. Speed and shooting, Baron Davis with those dunks, and the decibel meter hitting 120, which is unbelievable. It was called We Believe, and the Golden State Warriors believed and took care of the Dallas Mavericks. And no, Steph Curry was not part of this team. This was a couple years before Curry was drafted. But Golden State made things happening. Dallas couldn't believe their luck, and they suffered a few more upsets before finally winning the title in 2011. But yeah, Golden State did it. And finally, number 1, I think you could probably guess, is the 1994 playoffs between the number 8 Denver Nuggets and the number 1 Seattle Supersonics. Seattle were a dominant team and all that. Taking advantage of MJ's retirement, Seattle looked pretty damn good. Houston also looked good, but Seattle outlasted Houston to be the Western number 1 team. 63 wins the Sonics had. The Nuggets were 42-40, just above 500, just in the playoffs, and just with Dan Izzo, ABA legend. The Nuggets would lose the first 2 games in Seattle, and it looked like it was game, set, match. But Denver used both home games to their advantage. Went to the winner-take-all game 5. Of course, as I said, it was the tops of the time. It was not best of 7, it was best of 5. And then Dick Enberg calling the game for NBC. It was big. Sonics were expected to win. Unfortunately, they fumbled and then would tumble in one of the most unbelievable, iconic images of all time. When he got the rebound in overtime to give the Nuggets the title, well, against the Spurs, the iconic image of him holding the ball above his head as he lay on the court saying, "Oh my God," still resonates with fans. It sure does. I mean, Dikembe Mutombo. Wow. The Denver Nuggets took care of the Seattle Sonics. I feel bad for Jason Lundgren. And then 2 years later, the Sonics did make the finals, but MJ was back. So Seattle, blown opportunity. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.